Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial, and today we're going to talk through a fun document I found in the collection, and this is the Reactivation and Modernization Work Package that was created in 1967 for bringing the ship back for the Vietnam War. It's just a one-page sheet that is part of the ship's command history for that period, but it is interesting what it says and what it does not say. So this is my first time reading through it. First off, and again, there's a link in the description below if you would like to look at a scan of this yourself. So feel free to read along with me. The first area, and there are 4 areas here, General Activation Orders. Section A is Activate, the 16-inch guns, the 5-inch guns, and equipment. All deck equipment, berthing, messing, office, workspaces, main propulsion system, and auxiliary machinery. So this is interesting. One of my predecessors as curator always thought the ship went to Vietnam with only 2 of her engines reactivated, because one of the work orders he had seen said that they were only reactivating 2. It seems like the yard did 2 and contractors did the other 2, because the ship couldn't have gotten up to her 35 knot speed with only 2 engines. But this is specifically saying that all main propulsion and auxiliary will be reactivated. Interesting part B here is what you do not activate. Flag offices, 40mm magazines, some storerooms, some unused staterooms in flag area. So, flag offices, that one's obvious. Every time the Navy reactivates the Iowas, they're worried that they're spending a ton of money just for admirals to use them as fancy yachts. That's why in the 80s, the flag areas are deleted. In the 60s, it seems like the flag areas are not updated or reactivated by the yard. It seems like Captain Snyder had the ship's company reactivate a lot of these spaces that are said not to be reactivated, like 40mm magazines and flag offices, and they found other uses for them. For example, Admiral Halsey's stateroom, he has the crew clean up and open up, and then it is used for special guests and things like that. We've got a picture of Bob Hope outside of the Halsey suite, for example. 40mm magazines are turned into offices and other things. If you've got an unused space on the ship, it is claimed by people. So this is stuff that they did not pay the yard to do, but the ship's company seems to have done over time. So that's just interesting. They're saying, well, we're not using the 40mm guns, which we'll get to in a second, and storerooms and other things like that, so just leave them empty. They got filled eventually, but it was the ship's company that reactivated them. Section C here is what will be removed. 16 40mm for a total of 64 guns. The 60 20mm previously were removed. So both of these numbers are wrong, and I'm not sure what to make of it. The ship had 20 quadruple 40mm, which would be 80 total guns, and we don't know that she ever got up to 60 20mm. She was built with 49, and at some point another 8 may have been added when single mounts were turned into twin mounts, so that would make it 57 as the maximum possible armament. When they actually put in the twin mounts, they were not in fact the same weight, so often they would remove 3 single mounts and replace them with 2 twin mounts, which means that the ship may have never even got up to 57 total mounts. It may have been somewhere else in the 50s, but this is specifically saying 16 and 60, which is really weird, and I'm not sure if that is a typo, a mistake, just somebody writing a square number instead of a low number. Some of the Iowas did lose some of their 40mm guns in the 1950s. The Navy was looking at replacing the 20, 40 millimeter mounts with 12 3-inch mounts. And it seems like Iowa, particularly in the Atlantic, she never had her turret 2 mount, and her 2 forwardmost mounts, the ones on the front of the ship, forward of the main gun. Actually, I've got a model here. These mounts up here on the main deck on Iowa were said to be removed ahead of time because they were just shipping so much water in the Atlantic. I am not aware of that being done on any of the other Iowas. But assuming the turret top mounts were removed because they were not going to be replaced with 3-inch guns, and those forward ones were removed, that would bring us to 16 mounts. However, look at this picture of the 3 Iowas in the Philadelphia Navy Yard in the 60s. So that is Wisconsin tied up next to the pier, New Jersey in the middle without a hull number, and Iowa moored outboard. Missouri is not in this picture because she's in Bremerton, Washington in mothballs during this time, not in Philadelphia. So on Iowa and Wisconsin, you do not see any of the igloos covering 40 millimeter guns. On Iowa, the positions and tubs seem to be removed that are visible. This is a bow-on shot, so you can't see all of them. On Wisconsin, you can see that there is a gun tub on top of turret 2, but you can't see an igloo over it or an exposed gun. On New Jersey, look at those domes all over it. You can see them in the superstructure, you can see them on turret 2, you can see them forward of turret 1. So every known 40 millimeter position there is covered with an igloo, which you wouldn't have on there if there wasn't a gun. That's there to preserve the gun and all of the mixed metals that make it up, the brass and the steel and whatnot, so that they're not corroding in mothballs. So I think these numbers are just wrong. And then finally, section D under general activation, update fire control and ordnance systems. So that's pretty simple. New radars and fire control systems for the 5-inch guns, if there are new systems that are out there. An interesting thing that this does not say, the ship had directors for the 40 millimeter guns, 2 different types. The Mark 51s get removed with the guns, and another set, I think they were Mark 63s, 6 of them that could control the whole battery instead of the Mark 51s, which were just controlling individual gun mounts. The ship retained those Mark 63 directors because they could also be used to operate the 5-inch guns if the Mark 37 directors went down. What I believe happened was those were not to be removed, but they were also not to be reactivated. And so what I think happened was Captain Snyder had the ship's company reactivate those systems. And actually, now that I'm thinking about that, the stack of 3 40 millimeter mounts amidships, the topmost mount was removed to put in one of those directors. So that means that the ship should have had 18 mounts, and I'm not sure where the other 2 would have been removed from. Because you can see in top view pictures from Vietnam that the ship still has the gun tubs for them, and you would think if they removed the mounts, they would have also removed the tubs at that time. Not a solid piece of evidence, but it still doesn't quite add up in my head. All right, section 2 on here is modernization. New gun fire control computers and target designation system. New gun fire control computers and target designation systems. We know that the ship has its original Mark 1 Ables and Mark 8s and Mark 3s and all those original fire control computers, so what could this be referring to? During the 1950s, we believe the ship had a single Mark 48 shore bombardment computer added for the main guns. And I believe that this would be when a second one was added in after plot. So now there's one forward and after for the Mark 48. So that might be the new computer. Target designation system. In the 1950s, and I can't remember the mark of it, but a console was invented with like joysticks on it for aiming the guns, choosing your target, and we've got one in CIC. I suspect that's what this is referring to, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't know the makes, marks, and models of all of the fire control systems and when they were added, so there might be some other random things that are added in at this time or other updates that are made. New communications equipment. That's the big thing. All these old communications antennas are obsolete from the 1950s to the 1960s, so you got to completely update all the radio stuff. New detection and navigation radars. Likewise, these antennas also get swapped out. You notice that the masts have significantly more antennas on them. In fact, some of the 40mm gun tubs in the superstructure get replaced with antennas just because there's not enough room in the superstructure to put all of these things without them interfering with each other. Helicopter landing area and facilities. Earlier helicopters just landed on the bare fantail. They were relatively light early machines in the 1950s. By the 1960s, you see larger aircraft. It's unclear if they just laid a rubber pad over the wood deck or if they actually made like a metal structure there. But you can see that there's a helicopter landing pad on the ship in Vietnam that she did not previously have. This was nicknamed New Jersey International Airport. And in terms of facilities, never got a hangar. It wasn't until the 1980s that there was a control booth for it, so I'm not quite sure what that is referring to. It could be referring to Dash. The ship was designed to control Dash, which is a drone, a helicopter drone that destroyers had for anti-submarine work, and our type was called Snoopy. It would have spotted the fall of shot for the 16-inch guns, much like the later RPVs did. So there is a control room that is installed for that. So that may be what this is referring to. Medical and dental, all new equipment, new operating room facilities, 3 new dental chair units. That one's pretty self-explanatory. They're updating the medical spaces. And to improve habitability, air condition all living and messing spaces. This would be the first time in Iowa received air conditioning systems. Honestly, not entirely sure what that looked like because that was then removed and replaced with the 80s systems we now have. Tile the decks. This would be with that nice 9-inch asbestos tile that they put everywhere. Prior to that, the ship had bare steel decks. New fluorescent lighting. So, like the light fixtures in my office. Prior to that, the ship had incandescent light fixtures all over the place. If you go on some of the older World War II era museum ships, you see this, and it's a lot more dim inside the ships, especially since Iowa-class battleships don't have much natural lighting in the form of portholes. 4-man tables on the mess decks. These are folding, movable tables with some of those like eggshell shaped chairs that you see in the 1960s. They just got new tables and chairs in place of the old 8-man wooden benches. Individual reading lamps over the bunks, and 3-inch foam rubber mattresses for each bunk, and bunks in tiers of 3 instead of 4. So these were the old pipe racks that are chained to the ceiling during World War II with all the extra anti-aircraft gunners and things that are not needed during the Vietnam Commission. They had the bunks stacked at least 4 high. So we have long seen pictures of them removing racks from the ship, and we were confused, like, why the heck are they doing this? They used the same types of racks in the World War II, the 50s, and Vietnam. Why are they removing some? It's because they reduced the number in each tier of racks because it was a smaller crew. That gives you a little bit more habitability. They're also installing bunks, which can basically just be attached to the underside of the bunk above you. Manpower and Time. This is section number 3. In the 10 months at Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, a crew of up to 2,000 yard workmen involved with the ship dry docked the ship for over 3 months to accomplish all necessary hull work, painting, removal of outlet seals, work on underwater equipment such as propellers and rudder. 3 months in dry dock, 10 months total, 2,000 yard workers. So every one of you who messages me saying, we should get the ship ready to go and get out there. It won't take any time at all. We could get the engines running in a month. In the movie Battleship, they get the engines running same day. 10 months for 2,000 people at the Philadelphia Navy Yard to basically just get the ship ready to go again and replace some of the outdated gunnery and communication and radar equipment. Basically one-for-one swaps. We're plugging this antenna in where that one had been. No major restoration like you see in the 1980s, which again only took about 10 or 12 months to add all those missiles and things. So you could not reactivate this ship with less than a year. And the total cost in 1967 money, $21,500,000. This is the Ulster restoration. They didn't do anything major. $21.5 million to activate the ship in 1967. That maths out to well over $1 billion today. So, it's real interesting seeing what they said was done and what wasn't. Things like air conditioning, I assume didn't happen until the 80s because we've got no evidence of 1960s air conditioning because it was all replaced. Tile decks I thought might have happened in the 1950s, but it seems like that's a 1960s thing. The number of guns being removed, I didn't think any had been removed prior to this time for the 40 millimeters, but it sure seems like they were. Or this is a typo. So there's some real interesting information on here. Be sure to check it out in the link in the description below, and let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Also in the description below is a link to donate to support the ship. We really appreciate your support. It allows us to have the free time and the staff to go through our collections and find cool documents like this that further our knowledge of the ship and therefore your knowledge of the ship. And we really appreciate your support there. Battleship New Jersey does receive operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, but that doesn't really go into the work like this that we get to do here in Curatorial. Another way you can support the museum is by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about our channel and the stuff we do. Thanks for watching.